Hi, I'm Robert Horton, member of the National Society of Film Critics and the programmer historian in residence at Scarecrow Video. I'm happy to say that once again in the fall of 2021, I will be leading Scarecrow Academy, an online discussion group that's presented by the nonprofit Scarecrow in Seattle. Our series is a continuation of The Art in Noir, Film Noir and the Director. So this is part two. And we're looking at four classics of the film noir era proper, and also four neo-noir films from a slightly later period, all with an emphasis on the art of the director. You don't have to attend any of the previous sessions to join us for any of the upcoming ones. This series is free, takes place via Zoom on Saturday afternoons at 2 p.m. Pacific time. You can go to the Scarecrow Academy page, unless you're there already, and you'll find a link. Then Scarecrow will get back to you if you click on that link and send you the email invitation for our Zoom session. So you can register right there. Our next session takes place on Saturday, October 30th, with a discussion of John Boorman's 1967 film Point Blank. And right now I'm going to talk a little bit about the director and the film in anticipation of our meeting. John Borman was born in England in 1933. If you've ever seen his 1987 film Hope and Glory, very wonderful movie, you've seen some memories of Borman's childhood in London during the Blitz during World War II. He drew on autobiographical experiences for that. Eventually, as a young man, he got involved in a very interesting period of TV documentary in Britain in the 1950s and early 60s. And it earned him a shot at directing his first feature film, which was a 1965 movie meant to be just a knockoff of A Hard Day's Night, but starring the Dave Clark Five instead of the Beatles. And it's variously titled Catch Us If You Can or Having a Wild Weekend. A movie that is much better than it needs to be in a way that got noticed at the time and that got Borman a look from Hollywood. Maybe during our session, I'll read a little bit of Pauline Kael's review of that film, which is unusually insightful about what Borman is bringing to what could have been just a toss-off movie. Boorman's debut in Hollywood was going to be Point Blank, turns out, our film of the week, and we will note that Boorman has carried on since then with a rather odd but certainly distinctive career, a selection of arty films that are also entertaining and entertainments that are arty, always underscored by his interests in mythology and politics and the cinema of dreams and nightmares. He made Deliverance, he made the deeply felt Arthurian chronicle Excalibur, and a couple of exercises in genre pictures that are sometimes derided, but also really championed by critics. I think they're quite interesting, actually. Zardoz and The Exorcist Part 2. And he made some fascinating underseen movies like Beyond Rangoon and the Irish gangster film The General. And one of those directors whose careers make you think that you wonder what might have been if he'd had more freedom and more opportunities. Borman is alive and living on his Irish estate still today, where he has planted about 15,000 trees as a long ongoing project, and where he shot parts of Excalibur. As for Point Blank, Borman had an unusual stroke of luck for his first film experience in Hollywood. Lee Marvin had a contract giving him a final say over the content of the movie, and Marvin believed in Borman so much that he ceded his control over the film to the director. You can ignore my cat howling in the background. Big John Borman fan. The property that they worked on, Point Blank, which sometimes included improvisation on the day of the shooting, was an adaptation of a 1962 novel called The Hunter, written by Donald Westlake under the pseudonym Richard Stark. One of a series of novels featuring the incredibly hard-boiled character known as Parker, though the name was changed to Walker for various contractual reasons when they made the movie. And if you've ever read one of these Parker novels, and I've read a few, you know that they are extraordinary pieces of lean, brutal, lucid crime fiction, whose central character is a kind of lethally efficient sociopath, but with a strong sense of professionalism. The film changes many things about the source novel, except for the central situation, which has Lee Marvin's character getting double-crossed on a job, and he wants his share of the money back. A couple of the ways that these changes manifest themselves will, I think, make for good talking points when we get together in our session. One is that Boorman, with his interest in mythology and different forms of storytelling, can't help but bring subtext to what could have been just a superficially very simple, streamlined plot. The other big change might be measured in what happened to culture in the 5 years that passed between the book's publishing and the movie's production. Because Point Blank is at least as representative a film of 1967 as, let's say, The Graduate is. Not just in, costuming and set design and the cars and all that. All those elements are awe-inspiring if you have a taste for the period. But also in the ideas of the movie and the way it moves and sounds, to say nothing of a certain attitude as well. For instance, this is a crime movie steeped in a kind of existentialist mood. Lee Marvin's character and definitely his performance is alternatively active and passive, so that you wonder whether he already understands the essential meaninglessness of going through the motions of retrieving his money. No warrior seeking revenge was ever quite this empty in the eyes. There's also the way the film trusts the audience can handle a fragmented approach, a non-linear way of telling the story. In our previous noir movie, The Killing, we saw that Stanley Kubrick was testing some of those boundaries with a tricky sort of structuring device in that film. But Point Blank takes it much, much further. And this kind of fragmented quality would be an important part of filmmaking in the 60s and 70s, almost an acknowledgement that the center could no longer hold. Along with the arrangement of those pieces, you may also sense a kind of hard, jarring quality to the editing itself, to the business of when you cut to the next scene and what can be left out of the on-screen storytelling and left to the audience's imagination. This too would become kind of a common mode for films of the 60s and 70s. Of course, in our ongoing look at noir, we have here a neo-noir and a movie that is in color, in widescreen, and that spends a great deal of its time baking in the bright sunlight of Los Angeles, not the filigreed, shadowy nighttime of so many black and white noirs. So in this, the film, mostly coincidentally, shares this daytime Southern California look with the other neo-noir movies that are left to come in our series, The Long Goodbye, Chinatown, and Cutter's Way. This setting, the unblinking look at sunlight exposing the dark business of noir, is another new thing that we can talk about this week. I hope you also want to talk about Borman's extremely vivid use of color, which is wildly imaginative even by the existing palette of a 1967 film. And we should mention the way that certain actors fit into the noir world, from the leads in this movie, Lee Marvin and Angie Dickinson, to this very strong cast of character actors that fill in the rest of the bill. Includes pros like Carol O'Connor, Lloyd Bachner, Hart Bachner's the son, Michael Strong, and Keenan Wynn is in there. And also kind of quirky, slightly odd newcomers like John Vernon and James Sicking. In the spirit of this era of movie making, when even a Hollywood production with big movie stars could leave an audience wondering at the end, what did all that mean? We can even entertain the theory, which is put forward by the great film critic David Thompson, that we could view the movie as something that flashes through the mind of the main character after he is shot at the beginning of the film. What if he has been shot to death at the beginning of the movie, and that Walker is some sort of ghost or something during the rest of the picture? Even if you don't believe that, Borman himself certainly had a strong sense, and he talked about this, of how Lee Marvin could carry the aura of a man coming back to life. As a Marine, Marvin had been in a battle in World War II in the Pacific and had been one of the only survivors of his company, giving him firsthand knowledge of trauma and survivor guilt. We'll look at the many aspects of a movie that offers many intriguing aspects and interpretations. So join us on Saturday, October 30th, for a conversation around John Boorman's Point Blank.